All right, thanks very much. So I'm not Anton, I'm Seb, and I was the team lead for the commit graph in FishEye, which we have just released now. And I wanted to sort of give you a little run through, but I know you've seen a lot of the commit graph already in the keynote this morning, and you would have seen it in the developer tool State of the Union, so I was going to mix it up a little bit. And a little bit later, I'll just open the floor up to you guys if you have questions, because it is quite a complex tool. So to begin with, why did we sort of create a feature like this? Has everyone seen it, actually? Has anyone not seen it in the keynote? Good, excellent. So we moved to Mercurial about 9 months ago, and we really saw a need in our own development. We were doing lots of branching. We wanted a web-based graphical viewer. We thought it fit well into FishEye as a product, and we sort of figured that you would as well. And let me show you why. Is anyone here using Mercurial? Has anyone used glog, which is a graphical log extension? Yeah, so this is what glog looks like when you have a lot of branches. Each of those lines is a branch, and the horizontal ones are the merge points. And as soon as you sort of reach any sort of critical massive number of developers, so let's say in this case there's only about 15 different strands here, it becomes impossible to use. So we wanted a graphical way of representing this where we could sort of filter out the information that we wanted to. So I guess managing branches is actually pretty hard work in general. You've got to keep a lot of content in your brain or track it down. And perfect case point for us is that we actually had a bug fix in an earlier version of Crucible or FishEye, and we fixed it on a branch, and we forgot to merge it into our point release branch. We did a release, and then we still had this bug. Our customer's like, "What's going on?" So we forgot to merge it, and then we did it again. Will you believe it? We did a point release, like we did a 0.3 release. We said we fixed it. 0.4, we said we fixed it. We still hadn't, because we couldn't track our branches, and it was just too much work. So we developed this tool that we wanted to be able to manage our source code and see what's happening. And we really needed to gain confidence in our releases and determine sort of problems, but we wanted to do it in a way because we didn't know exactly how we'd use the tool. So we developed it in a very open and I guess developer-focused way, so that when you guys come involved and try to use the feature, you can extract the information that you need out of it. You can apply your own plugins on top, and I'll get through to that. So is there enough contrast there? Can you see the lines? Yeah. All right. So this is just a really brief picture of the commit graph. We have highlighters. A highlighter is really just a decorator on top of the graph. It can provide annotations, so when you hover over one of the commits, or the dots of the commits, you get information. You can add the commit ID, the branch that it's on, and if you register a highlighter, if you want to create one, you can add any information you want in there. So with Jira's, you can show Jira keys or review keys or any information that you want to pull in. Currently we have lineage, Jira issues, and reviews. So lineage is, I'll get to that in a moment, but it's all pretty fantastic actually, if I do say so. And we want to use it for branch and release management, as I just said. It's really important to us to have deep linkable and shareable entities in FishEye. It is a web app. We use it collaboratively. If I'm looking and trying to diagnose a problem across multiple branches, then I need to send that particular view that I'm looking at to my developer who's across the hall or maybe on the other side of the world. And with a very interactive graph like that, it's very easy to lose context, so it's very easy to just get a link. So here's a more complete view. What you can see is the commits on the left-hand side. There are 3 branches showing. We have Jira keys, which the commits have been registered against, and we have tag notations as well. So you see on the right-hand side, it's very easy to see a tag. You can enter a change set ID or a tag. You can very quickly navigate to any commit or tag in that graph, and no matter how far in the past it is. And if it's not in that branch set, we'll just load it up for you. So we've currently got lineage selected, so I'll show you what happens when you click on one of the change sets. So a highlighter is a decorator, as I said, and it interacts when you also click on a change set. So you click on a change. So I've clicked on adding the tag, and you'll see the difference there. That we have now brought forward all the commits in the lineage of that particular change. So every change that has contributed thus far is below, and everywhere that that change propagates to. So in this case, the 2.6 tag point for FishEye does not contain any of the information, which is grey. Now that can be really useful to understand where a code is coming from and going to in order to have more confidence in your releases. Now I'll show you if I select the tip, the head of this branch. It's a 2.7 development feature branch, and you'll see how that graph changes. So we'll know immediately that the work on that branch includes everything which is in the 2.6 release at that tag point, well actually before the tag point, and we never ever want to see that line merge into 2.6 because we're doing work on our development in our bleeding edge branches there. In fact, this branch is branched from another feature branch. It doesn't actually come directly off the 2.6 branch. Right, so branch selection, it's very trivial to select the branches you want to see. You just click on that little button there, you get a pop-up which shows your branches. By default, you see the most recently active ones, and that is dynamic. So every time you visit, you'll see the 5 most recent ones, unless you change them, in which case it becomes sticky. It's still really easy to find your recently active ones, though. Now, alternatively, we only had branch lanes available to begin with, and we felt that there's actually a bit of information missing here, because what we don't have here is a method of visualizing, or this is currently, we're planning on adding this, but of finding out where other merge or branch points come into which aren't on any of these branches. So if you have a 4th branch, you're not going to be seeing that, for example, a commit is going off to that branch. There's a branch creation. So until we make that improvement, we have an all branches mode, so you can see all the activity across all your branches. Now that can be cumbersome if you have a large repository, obviously, but it can also be really useful. Probably more useful in a smaller project. So you hover over the change set and you get the branch which it exists in. But if you select one, you can see the entire ancestry across all branches for that particular change. Now this is really easy to see which branches haven't been merged in. So you can see here that we've got a head here, we've got another one here, we've got another one down the bottom. So we use this all the time to really to see what needs to be merged. Now I know that a lot of you guys in here, actually, how many of you are on Subversion? Most of you? You're probably wondering, well, this is pretty cool, but it's probably a bit more for Git and Mercurial users. But it's absolutely not the case. So here's the Subversion repository. It's actually Clover. You can see that we still get branch points, and it's just much more linear. What you're seeing here, where you see essentially all these changes on the one branch, is called anonymous branching in distributed version controls, where essentially you have to do these implicit merges because you're not always at the tip. So if I go back to the Subversion graph, the one limitation in Subversion is that we actually can't draw merge operations, and that's a limitation of Subversion's information. Is very loose, so it's actually a very difficult problem to solve. It's hopefully we can get there with a lot of hard work. But you can still get a lot of value out of the graph if you're using Subversion. You still get... did everyone see the Jira highlights this morning and the review highlights? You can still show the branches you want to see. You can see all the tag operations and all the branch points as well. How many of you are on Git? Or use Git or are thinking about moving to Git? So Git's actually really interesting. Because it has another class of problems. In fact, while developing this feature, we actually learned a lot about underlying SCMs. But the Git repository graph shows you differences between branches, and that's because a branch in Git is really just a pointer to a particular change set. Essentially, you never commit to a branch Rather, a commit is accessible from a branch, which means that branches will be accessible, sorry, commits will be accessible on multiple branches. So let me show you. This is the commit graph for a branch, for a Git branches repository, where they're sort of overflowing. And if I just reorder that list, it's a completely different diagram. So what we're seeing is the difference from the left to each rightmost branch. So the more leftmost a branch is, the higher weighted it is. Now the reason for that, again, is because the bottom, for example, that bottommost commit is actually accessible on all branches. The root commit is going to be on every single branch in your repository always. So it's still very useful to see the diffs of branches essentially in Git. You need to know, Git doesn't matter it doesn't matter in Git where a particular commit was made as long as it's accessible from there. And extensibility, really, we developed this feature so that you guys can come along and say, well, actually, I sort of need to see slightly different information. And we can write highlighters for the commit graph in two different ways. One is with a plugin, which then all of your user base will see. It's quite trivial. It's just JavaScript and some CSS if you want. In fact, it's actually just JavaScript. Or with Speakeasy. Does anyone not know what Speakeasy is? Awesome. So Speakeasy, just in case you're too shy, is just locally run JavaScript, just like a Grease Monkey script. You can write a highlighter in 10 minutes, which actually we did. So we're actually planning on releasing a commit graph expansion pack, which you can be able to get via plugins.Atlassian, which in the last week we've had like 3 or 4 of our developers write some new highlighters that they found useful. So highlight me all the authors that are, highlight me all the commits that are done by the same author when you select one. Or a lineage ++, which is showing me the differences between any 2 points. If I merge from one change from one commit to another commit, what are the differences? Tell me everything that I'm going to get. So that's the sort of power that you can get from the commit graph to be able to visually see what's going to change. So we're also planning on integrating Bamboo, and we've got free text search highlighter as well. But I just wanted to wrap up there and see if anybody had any questions or had any specifics. Yeah, go ahead.
Could you compare your approach with rev sets in Mercurial?
So we actually would really like to implement a rev set. So a rev set in Mercurial, for those who aren't aware, is really just a collection of revisions. It's a range of revisions where you can essentially target specific revisions and perform operations on them. So they're pretty ubiquitous in Mercurial, and they're quite powerful. We don't have any sort of comparison to that in FishEye, but we'd like to actually create an SCM agnostic rev set sort of capability there, where you'd be able to filter out the information you want to just the commits you want. Currently, it just shows the branches entirely.
Yeah. Have you thought of extending the commit graph interface for initiating merges and branches?
Yeah, so currently, FishEye is a read-only application. So what he's asking is that if I've got a repository here and I want to merge this commit into my trunk, why can't we really just help you do that? And there's actually no good reason why we can't. We could very easily provide you the command to do it or try to do that. But we'd actually really like to take that one step further and really automate that process for you. But that does breach into the realm of changing FishEye's paradigm from a read-only application into be able to do repository management, which is something that we may get around to doing.
Okay, thanks everybody.